this is, I always like people to come away from a storytelling event with something they can share with those at home. So when you go home and you tell everyone what happened here tonight, they might ask, so that storyteller whose name you can't remember, did he tell any Irish riddles or jokes? And you can tell them yes. You can tell them, he asked us, what's Irish and sits behind your house? Patio furniture. Okay, now to the real story. The Irish playwright John Quentin Synge, for a few years at the beginning of the 20th century, wrote periodically for the Manchester Guardian, the English newspaper, sending off occasional dispatches about social conditions in the west of Ireland and in County Wicklow in the southeast. So one time Synge was walking in Wicklow from one village across a series of hills to another village. It was after a heavy rain, and he marveled. Each village he passed through had a strange splendor that comes over the Irish countryside in wet weather. And he admired from the mountaintops the banks of white mist that were rolling down toward him. As he walked up a steep, heathery track, out of the ditch alongside the path rolled an old man with a sharp white face and a heavy beard who fell into step alongside Synge. And they spoke about the weather. And then the old man began to speak in earnest. He said, there have been 3 cruel plagues that came across the land since I was a boy in the West. The first was the great wind of 1839 that took away all the grass and every other green thing. Next came the blight that arrived on the 9th of June, 1846. Till that day, all the potatoes were clean and good, but that morning, a strange mist came off the sea and settled over the land. And it was so still, you could hear a calm voice speaking from a mile away. And that's how it was the next day, and the day after that. And then the stalks of the potato plants began laying over with all of the life gone out of them. And that was the start of the terrible famine and the troubles of Ireland. But people continued in their wicked animosity one against another, so God Almighty sent a 3rd plague, and that was the disease called the cholera. And everyone emptied out of Sligo. 'Tis in Sligo I was reared. At that time, you could walk down the streets in the center of the town and not see another soul. You could knock on one door and on another and another after that, and there'd be no one to answer to you. All the people had fled to the north and east and south for fear of the disease. And people in those places were digging up the roads and pushing the people back because they had their own dread of sickness. There was a law at that time that if there was anyone sick in your house, you were to inform the authorities, or they'd put you in jail. And there was a man. His wife took ill, and he gave the proper notice. And a band of men came and took his wife away from him, took her to the sick house, and he didn't hear any more about her until he heard she was after dying, and she was to be buried the next day. Well, your man thought about it. He thought about the dread that was on the people and the hurry that was on them, and how it was said they were putting bodies in the ground that still had the breath of life in them. So he got up in the middle of the night, and he went down to the dead house, and he felt his way in at the door. There were more than 200 bodies laid out, and he felt his way from one body to the next, giving each one of them a good shake. And his wife heard him coming. She was not dead at all. Is that you, Meg? Sure it is, Maggie. And you still have your last gasps in you. I do, Mick. But they're after putting me here with 50 corpses, and they say we're all to be buried at dawn of day. Oh, my poor woman. Do you still have strength in your arms? Do you think you could hold on to my back? I think I could, Miggy. So he picked her up on his back, and he carried her out of that place. And he carried her home along the most solitary, unpeopled lanes, and he laid her down on the one bed and told no one that she was there. And they say after 3 days she was up and walking about. And after 30 days, she had the bloom of life back in her. And they say she lived for many a long year after that. But there were those among her neighbors who never looked at her the same way again, because they said she was the woman who had come back from the dead. When the old tramp finished his story, he and Sing walked together for a while before they parted ways. But all we know about their time keeping company together is this story, because Sing wrote it down. I'm sorry to tell you that John M. Sing himself died a few years after that, at the tender age of 37, with plays unfinished. But he left behind him a shining body of work with gems like this one that remind us that every once in a while, be it ever so seldom, there's always the possibility that the love we have for each other can triumph.